Welcome to Breaking Bulletin, your trusted source for local and international news, gripping stories, and documentaries that dive deep into the truth behind today's headlines. If you want to stay informed and never miss a beat, please hit that like button, share this video with your friends, leave a comment below, and make sure to subscribe to Breaking Bulletin for ongoing updates from around the world. Today, we bring you a crucial and complex story unfolding at the center of North American economics and diplomacy. The trade war ignited by former and now reinstated U.S. President Donald Trump is surging once again, and experts say Canada has the most to lose. As of April 10, 2025, Canada finds itself not just a participant, but the reluctant leader in what could be a turning point for global trade. Tariffs are biting, markets are reacting, and geopolitical lines are being redrawn in real time. We are unpacking the full picture from historical roots to future implications and exploring why Canada is now leading the resistance. Let's break it down. It was Wednesday, April 9, 2025, when Donald Trump stunned markets by announcing a selective pause on some of the most aggressive tariffs he had unleashed in his second term. The move came after global markets tumbled sharply, prompting fears of a broader economic downturn. While countries like South Korea and members of the European Union saw some relief, Canada was notably excluded from this reprieve. The United States kept Canada locked into a harsh set of tariffs, 25% on auto exports, steel, and aluminum, while imposing a 10% baseline tariff on virtually everything else. In response, Canada has maintained and expanded its countermeasures. A new $35.6 billion in retaliatory tariffs was announced on Wednesday alone, bringing the country's total counter-tariff package to a staggering $95 billion. These measures directly target U.S. vehicles, steel products, and even agricultural staples like orange juice. Why has Canada become the focal point? It boils down to exposure and vulnerability. According to 2024 data from Statistics Canada, 77% of all Canadian exports go directly to the United States. That amounts to over $421 billion in annual trade. Compared to other heavily export-reliant nations like South Korea or Taiwan, Canada's dependence on a single trade partner is unmatched, and that puts it in an extraordinarily fragile position. Diversification sounds like the logical solution, but for Canada, it is easier said than done. Trade with Asia and Europe remains relatively small, and efforts to build new partnerships face logistical, political, and historical barriers that cannot be overcome overnight. Still, with its economy worth $2.2 trillion, its leverage as a top energy supplier, and a federal election looming on April 28, Canada may have no choice but to step into a leadership role in the fight against protectionism. To understand how Canada arrived here, we must go back in time. Canada's economic ties with the United States began in earnest following its confederation in 1867. By 1988, the Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement formalized the relationship, followed by an AFTA in 1994 and the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, or CUSMA, in 2020. Together, these agreements solidified more than $1 trillion in annual trade. Canada is no lightweight in this partnership. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2024, Canada supplies 60% of America's imported oil and 85% of its imported electricity. When it comes to autos, Canada exports over $20 billion in vehicles annually to the United States. Steel and aluminum, worth $21 billion, also prop up manufacturing across 36 U.S. states. The first signs of tension emerged during Trump's first presidency, when in 2018 he imposed 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum, citing national security concerns. Canada responded with $16.6 billion in retaliatory measures, a confrontation that temporarily eased with the signing of CUSMA, but in March 2025, Trump reignited the fire. His administration announced a sweeping 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods, including a 10% levy on energy and potash commodities vital to North American supply chains. Unlike in 2018, this round of tariffs came without any CUSMA protection. That decision left Canada exposed and outraged. The core issue remains that no other U.S. trading partner is as dependent on American markets as Canada. Even Mexico, which sends about 70% of its exports to the U.S., is less exposed than Canada, whose 77% reliance makes it the most vulnerable economy in this trade war. Why is Canada hit the hardest? Scale matters. Its $421 billion in exports to the United States dwarfs those of other nations. South Korea sends $111 billion and Taiwan just $92 billion, according to the U.S. Trade Representative's 2024 report. Energy accounts for a quarter of Canada's exports, about 4 million barrels a day. A 10% energy tariff hits roughly $40 billion in yearly sales. Automobiles make up another massive slice, with $20 billion in exports under threat from a 25% tariff, putting more than 100,000 Canadian jobs on the line. According to Unifor 2025, steel and aluminum are also deeply entwined with American infrastructure, yet face severe new restrictions. Economists at BMO forecast a possible 1 to 2% contraction in Canada's GDP, representing a loss of up to $44 billion. That is far more significant than projected losses for countries like South Korea or the European Union, where the impacts are expected to remain under 1%. From Windsor's auto plants to Saskatchewan's potash mines, the entire Canadian economy is now bracing for a storm. Diversifying trade is a logical response, but one paved with challenges. Canada's $150 billion in trade with Asian nations like Japan, South Korea, and India remains a fraction of its U.S. engagement. Meanwhile, its trade relationship with China, worth about $100 billion, froze in the aftermath of diplomatic tensions following the 2023 Hardeep Singh Nayar affair. Even the European Union, accessed through the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, accounts for just $73 billion. While that number is growing at 5.2% annually, it is far from sufficient to replace lost U.S. trade. Efforts like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, completed in 2024 and projected to lift GDP by 0.3%, are critical but insufficient. Canada's forestry and machinery sectors once sent 40% of their exports outside North America in the early 2000s. Today, that figure has dropped to just 20%, according to CIBC's 2025 report. The number of Canadian firms exporting beyond the U.S. has fallen from 85% in 2006 to just 70% now. Each of these shifts takes time to reverse, and time is what Canada lacks. Why is Canada stepping up instead of stepping back? Because it has no other viable option. Trump's recent remarks, calling Canada a potential 51st state, and tying trade policies to border security and fentanyl crises, have stoked nationalist sentiment across Canada. Ottawa has responded with sharp economic retaliation. The $95 billion in counter tariffs is not just symbolic, it is strategic. Canada is targeting U.S. states with strong economic ties to Canadian exports. Energy tariffs could raise U.S. gasoline prices by 50 cents per gallon, according to the American Automobile Association. Automotive restrictions will hit Michigan and Ohio hardest, while steel and aluminum cuts will impact job centers across the Midwest. Commerce voices like Howard Lutnick are warning of economic fallout, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates a $467 billion GDP loss, translating to $1,300 per American household per year. Prime Minister Mark Carney is navigating the storm. In a statement posted on X this past Wednesday, Carney welcomed Trump's temporary pause for other countries, calling it a reprieve, and signaling a willingness to negotiate a new economic and security framework after the April 28 federal election. Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has been rallying support from G7 allies in Europe and Asia, and Germany has declared, we've got your back. At home, opposition voices are intensifying. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre criticized the Liberal government for not securing a tariff pause like other nations. At a rally in Windsor, he stated, "America's best friend got no pause." NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has called for greater economic independence, stating, "Less US, more us." Trump's global unpredictability is also at play. His recent 90-day tariff pause for certain countries followed desperate pleas from 75 nations. Meanwhile, China has raised its retaliatory tariffs to 125%, and Taiwan has countered with duties on over 32% of U.S. imports. The U.S. stock market responded positively, clawing back 300 points, but Canada's TSX dropped by 2%. Auto manufacturer Magna saw a 5% decline. American lawmakers are also feeling the pain. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney highlighted the decline in Canadian tourists to New York's wineries, while Representative Richard Neal called the policy dumb and unconstitutional. Even Trump's own U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer shifted from a no-exemption stance to supporting Trump's instinct-driven carve-outs. Canada remains excluded. History offers a dire warning. The protectionist spiral of the 1920s helped trigger the Great Depression. Canada's current leadership role may be key to avoiding a similar fate. Its advantage lies in leverage. Canada could restrict energy exports, squeeze Detroit's auto sector, and force U.S. firms into action. Diversification, while essential, will take time. The stakes are high, up to a 2% GDP loss, tens of thousands of jobs, and an April 28th election that may determine Canada's trade future. The next 90 days, leading up to July 8th, will be critical. Prime Minister Carney and Donald Trump are expected to engage in post-election talks. Energy may become Canada's trump card. Meanwhile, the country continues to expand ties with Europe and Asia. A recent $1 billion Polish aircraft deal hints at broader diversification. But tariffs remain in place, markets remain volatile, and Canada remains at the front lines of a global trade showdown. What do you think? Is Canada showing leadership or taking unnecessary risks? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. That wraps up today's deep dive on Breaking Bulletin. Please remember to like this video, share it with others, drop your comment, and hit subscribe for more exclusive coverage on international affairs, economic shifts, and untold stories. We will catch you next time.